It's the start of a new month and a new year, and I cannot wait to get going on more Incomplete Series Challenge reads. This marks my 5th month running the Incomplete Series Challenge with my patrons, and it has been a wonderful challenge for me. I have been digging myself into a hole for at least the last decade where I just keep starting one thing after the other, and becoming a content creator online about 4 or 5 years ago did not help. This is allowing me the opportunity to put a halt on all of my bad behaviors and really focus in on the series that I have deemed the most important. So at the start of this month, I am sitting at 57 incomplete series. And these are ones where I'm not waiting on the author. There are actual tangible books in my face ready to be read of series that I have started and intend to continue. And this month I've got some fun reading plans. So first and foremost, trying to get through this tome, Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, book 5 in the Stormlight Archive, one of my all-time favorite series. Top 3, easily. Some days it's my top spot, but usually Robin Hobb's Elderlings takes that place. And then in strong contention for spot number 2 with Joe Abercrombie. You can see the kind of caliber there. I love this one so much. I have done so many rereads of these, I can hardly count. And so I'm taking my time with it. It's been out a month and I'm only 20% in, and I feel like I'm okay with that. This is not about rushing through these books as quickly as possible to get on to other things. So I've kind of gotten into this little pattern of finishing a day or kind of a section of one of these books and then setting it aside to focus on something else for about a week. So my goal is to have it done by the end of this challenge so I can mark it off, but I'm basking in it. I'm loving it. I'm kind of annotating as I go, so taking notes in my book journal, and it's made the experience a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm picking up on a lot more details than I would have otherwise. So loving this. So that'll be ongoing this month. And then on top of that, I am approaching the halfway point in The Last Threshold by R.A. Salvatore. This is book 4 and the final book in the Neverwinter saga. So per my last video, completing this will wrap up what I'm considering a series from this author at this point. And by the way, I know I've already published a video where I said what number in the series this one was, but then I realized my number wasn't taking into account like the Crystal Shard, no, Servant of the Shard, and the Road to the Patriarch, and the whole mess with those other 2 characters. I'm counting those. So this is a little higher up in the series than I actually thought, like maybe book 26 or so. I don't know, I'm so confused. I don't care. It's book number 4, and this is going much better than my last read. In fact, this one, per my random draw, was one I was not very excited to get back to, hence it's on like a more orange paper. But I'm glad I did, because I don't think I would have picked it up of my own accord for years. And it's actually taken me about 5 years to get to this point in this set of 4 books. And I read the 3rd one last month, did not like it at all. Decided to continue on anyway, just to wrap it up because I already had momentum, and I'm so glad I did. This is so much better, and I don't think I would be enjoying this one as much had I not just read the one before it, because there's a lot of small, minor characters who I'm not having to spend any time trying to get reacclimated with. I already know who they are, so I can just enjoy what's happening. So that seems to be the key for me. That is the whole point of all of this incomplete series challenging that I'm doing, is I'm trying to get back to series more frequently so that I have the most maximal experience with them as I can. Maximal. And also on the docket this month, I'm going to be picking up Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. It's book 3 in the 4th Wing series. There are enough things about this that are working well for me that I am enjoying it overall. The dragons are where it's at. I freaking love the dragons. I love the school setting aspect, even though it's kind of gotten away from that a little bit the further along we've gotten it. But I'm there for it. I think this will be a really nice palate cleanser between some of my heavier reads, and we'll be starting that one about 3 weeks into this particular episode. So that'll be fun. I will be finishing this one, and against my better judgment, I would like to pick a random draw. Now, I've got some completed draws right here, but then I have Dandelion Dynasty, which got picked a couple months ago, and I still haven't made my way back to it. I'm kind of thinking I want to get through Wind and Truth first, because it's just as expansive as that one, and honestly, harder to follow. So you got to be really present for it, and I don't want to miss anything. So that one's on the back burner, and because I'm not intending to get back to that as quickly as I would have liked, I think I want to pick another one from random draw, even though I don't know that I have the time to tend to it like I want to. But I might. My schedule is so busy right now. I am trying to simplify life. Picking a random draw is not really in my best interest right now, but it would be worth it to me if I could pick a good color. So I've got them on a color gradient. The pink ones are ones I am absolutely excited to read. A lot of the ones along this top shelf here, probably this shelf here, is more like the dark orange ones, less so. And then the closer you get to yellow, yellows are the ones I don't want to read at all. So if I'm going to pick and spend some precious time and stress myself out, I want it to be for a good one. Hey, these are my rules and it's all working for me. I feel like I've done a really good job by not even starting new series throughout this whole thing. So I feel this is how I'm rewarding myself. So I have all 57 series that I'm in the middle of in this little thing, and I'm going to pick one. And if it's yellow or light orange, so help me, I'm throwing it back and choosing again. Okay. Caveats out of the way. What do we got? I'm nervous. Body Finder. Oh, I can work with that. The only reason this one is not on a pink paper is because it's a physical read. They do have audiobooks, but I've discovered that young adult through audiobook makes me hate them. Like, you watch my ratings generally over time. I used to really like YA, and then I switched over to audiobook consumption for a lot of them, and it's all the same woman with the same voice, and it drives me crazy, and I feel like that's the reason I'm not liking them. So I ran an experiment. I read Body Finder physically and loved it. So I'm sticking with that theory, but for the moment, that's what these are. These are young adult mystery novels, essentially. And the premise is this girl can sense dead bodies. And so she's kind of using that to help solve crime, essentially. Like, it's not structured by any means, but she happens to have a skill that's really useful. And I loved it. One of the things I loved most about the first book is the organic relationship. Like, teen love stories tend not to work for me at all. But this one felt so natural, and it's honestly one of the best ones I've ever read. And then on top of all of that, I met the author at a book signing years ago, and she's one of the most delightful people. She's so funny, and so a lot of her personality is present in the books, and I love it. I have been itching to get back to this, but haven't been able to justify the time. I've always had some sort of arc or other physical read going that would prevent me from continuing. So this is the next one. Desires of the Dead. This is totally doable. Hey, things are working out for me. So this has just become my before bed read, and my only fear is that it has been so long that I will have lost any engagement. I don't remember the names of the main character or the love interest, so, but I'm sure it won't be that difficult to pick it up. Cool. This has been a really weird month because I've been so busy. I've been working 2 jobs, doing this side hustle, doing another side hustle, coordinating family things, dealing with health issues, trying to cook, but it just means that all of my extracurriculars are at a glacial pace, which I'm okay with that because I've been enjoying myself. But considering I only have 4 days left in the month and I have very little progress to share with you since my last update, which was on the 10th. So 20 days worth of reading, and this is where I'm at. I am in the middle of a bunch, and we'll start with, I have not made any progress with Dritzt. It got good enough that it stopped being my throwaway audiobook that I could listen to on the side and just kind of inch my way through. No, I suddenly found myself invested. So I set it aside. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll pick it up when Wind and Truth is done, which I'll talk about in a minute. But then I also did my other random draw, Desires of the Dead, and I've made it to chapter 3 because this was going to be my before bed book. But then I thought, you know what? Why am I starting something new when I'm getting to the real good stuff in Wind and Truth? So I started reading this one before bed, and you can see, now this doesn't look like much, but this is 10 hours left in the audiobook. There's a full Dresden books left to read in this one, and it's been taking all my time, and I've been enjoying the snot out of it. There was one aspect of the story that I felt was a little long-winded, no pun intended, and maybe could have clipped along a bit faster. I don't know. I was dealing with a little bit of a pacing thing in one part, but the contrast between the lull that was and the careening pace we're now at maybe it was intentional, you know? There is something to that building momentum going on. One thing I will say, I do think I will have this book done by the end of the weekend. I've been focusing all my efforts on it, essentially. And what better for an incomplete series challenge than to bring up to date my favorite still ongoing series. But amidst all of that, I was hoping to be done with Wind and Truth by the end of December. I jokingly said, I'll see you at the end of January when I actually finish it. That was a joke. But here I find myself 3 days until February and it's still not done. So in that time frame, because I thought I was going to be finished, I scheduled a buddy read with my patrons for Onyx Storm. This is the fourth wing series. I know I've mentioned it earlier. So we started this one. I am a couple of chapters in, maybe 10% actually, and I haven't touched it in like 3 days because I'm like, why am I reading anything other than Wind and Truth? I'm letting my anxiety of the other things that I'm not reading get in the way of the one book that I would like to be on. What I've read this one has been on par so far. There's these trigger warnings at the beginning of the book, which I think it's great that she includes those. I think it's very thoughtful to her audience who may be sensitive to certain topics. But she describes all these things that might be contained in these stories. And then I brace myself, right? And then I get to those parts and I'm like, oh, that was it? That was what we were warned about? Like, I've read Abercrombie. This ain't nothing compared to that. So grimdark these are not. And actually, I think personally, they could be a bit darker. So the whole premise of this one is a character gone dark. And I think so far, I'm not very far into this, they would benefit from more grittiness. The sexual content, like, she goes there, right? It's a full-on sex scene. The violence aspect of it, I feel like it should be on par. Like, if you're gonna do it, go full bore. What it's doing is keeping me at an uncaring distance because the things that are happening are, like, kind of on paper, very violent, very sad, whatever, but I don't feel it because of the way it's being portrayed. And so I'm not connected to the story at all. Character deaths mean nothing to me in this one. And I can't help but think that that might be a factor, as it's kind of like a bubblegum version of grimdark. No, it's not even grimdark, but you know what I mean? Like, it's professing that it's edgy like that, but then when you come down to the actual scenes, it's got a very YA overtone. You know how YA does dark stuff? Yeah. And because in this one, the whole plot is kind of around a dark element, it's not dark enough for me. Like 10 years ago me would be appalled to hear that. Like, what? You like reading about dark stuff? But I really feel like not shock value stuff. Let's be clear on that. I don't like that kind of content in there for sake of shock value, because that's a trick that only works once per book, right? But like an Abercrombie book where the darkness enhances the story because it really digs you into the soul of these people and they feel so relatable and so many things about it. So anyway, that would be my complaint. I think that's why I'm not feeling connected, and I'm also finding the main character very hypocritical. We'll see how it goes. So that's where I'm at for now. I've been stalling on filming this because I haven't had anything really to update, because I haven't finished anything. And I am certain that I'm not going to be able to finish this book by the end of the month. But 3 chapters in, and I'm right back where I was when I enjoyed the heck out of the first book. I really like this writer. So this is one that I'm itching to get back to. I just don't think I'm going to have time. So this is where we're at. And it leaves me in a conundrum because I like to have things wrapped up by the end of the month so that it frees me up to have an entire month to focus on a random draw for the next month. If I carry all of these titles into the next month, then I'm not even going to get to my random draw until 3 weeks in, and we're doing a buddy read for Project Hail Mary. I know I talk about reading a lot in a very stressful manner because I'm going through these massive changes of wanting to simplify everything, and I'm noticing that all of these habits that I've built in, all of these routines that I get into, are not serving me. And it's just putting more and more emphasis on here's where I want to be with my reading enjoyment and here's where I am. And it's just trying to do too many things at once. And I know some of you can relate. The comments that I've been getting have been incredibly thoughtful and supportive, and I appreciate those. And I know I'm not alone. So with this journey, I am more and more coming back to trying to focus on just one thing at a time and not letting the anxieties of all the other things that I also should be reading get in the way of that. So right now it's Wind and Truth. That's my number one. I find myself drawn back to it continually. It's the only book that I've really got focused on, and I've kind of set everything else aside. Because I've committed a buddy read for Onyx Storm, that's going to be what I pick up next, and I'm going to read it in earnest from start to finish without picking up anything else. And so these two books will likely not be finished even next month. And next month I also have planned a Read Burn Hoard, which I like to include a book reading element to that one, which is often random draw. So if you follow my channel and get deep into the videos, you're essentially going along with me on this process, which is an accurate reflection of what my reading life feels like. I used to not overthink it this much, but not overthinking it has gotten me to the point where I'm actively not enjoying reading anymore. And so that's why I feel like all of these changes need to be made. So, best thing I can do for myself, I'm going to put these on hold for a while. Probably shouldn't have started them. It worked out okay when I had a before bed book, whatever. But then I decided to make my main book my before bed book, and where we're at. Onyx Storm is probably going to be next. And then Wind and Truth, we're going to keep reading that till it's done. I think making this incomplete series challenge the main focus for the last 6 months has been incredibly eye-opening, and I think that is why all of these anxieties and dissatisfactions are being drawn to the surface, because I'm forced to face all of my inefficiencies, and I am also seeing how just dang slowly I'm making my way through everything. And I've said it before, but the fact that I'm reading Wind and Truth, like the longest book I've ever read probably, amidst all of this, trying to feel like I'm making progress, like it's the worst combination ever. It's the worst for my patience and my feeling like I'm able to accomplish things, like just awful timing. Because what Wind and Truth, I bet you I could have not only finished both of, like all 3 of these, but maybe even like 2 or 3 more books from my docket, and I would have felt like I was making more progress. So I do know that's a factor. But one of the cool things is that a challenge that I thought would just be fun to run with my patrons has turned into a really cool soul searching, like I'm digging into the whys of the challenge, and I think it's actually going to improve my life beyond that. So whatever challenge we pick next, hopefully it has like an element of that. One major benefit is that it has gotten me out of that knee-jerk habit of starting new things, because I have not started a new series this entire challenge. That's 5 months without a new series, and I'm not feeling the lack of. I'm feeling a bit anxious at the things that I'm not getting to, but I'm excited because I know when I do, I will have the discipline to just sit with them, and I will be very conscious that if I start something new, I will be able to finish it within a reasonable time frame if I'm enjoying it, obviously. So that's everything. I will do a final day of the month check-in to show you where everything's at, and then we'll kick off my personal last month of the challenge, which I'll be pulling all the stats for everything I read for the challenge and looking at the actual progress that I've made over the course of 6 months. I think it'll be encouraging. Welcome to the Shelf Help segment. This is where I'm taking my favorite productivity and organization books and applying them to my reading life. Now, the author I would like to discuss today is Gretchen Rubin, who is responsible for one of my all-time favorite organization books, Outer Order, Inner Calm. But I'm actually going to go old school today and talk about one of her original books, probably still the most popular one, The Happiness Project. I read this back in 2021, and this author and I see eye to eye on a lot of things. I think change of any sort starts with observing your own behaviors and figuring out what's serving you and what's not. And in Gretchen's case, she figured out she wasn't as happy as she wanted to be and started looking at different aspects of her life that she could improve. Hence, the Happiness Project was born, where she focused on one thing per month with the idea of getting incrementally better at each of those categories. So essentially, she'd pick a topic and really dig into the whys. Why is this not serving me? What can I do better? Why is this a value for me? And from there, tracked her improvement and documented the process. My favorite thing about her method is it's not about attaining perfection in any of the one categories. It's about continual improvement and implementing tiny habits every day that incrementally add up to something meaningful. It's meant to be incremental. Even the tiniest changes can add up to something meaningful over time. And I also love that this book is not a cookie cutter method for attaining happiness. Each person comes up with their own categories, evaluating what means the most to them and where they want to spend their focus and energy. And it's told kind of an exhibition of the author's life, more of a creative nonfiction than a self-help how-to guide. But from that, I was able to just to extract so many really helpful ideas and inspirations that I applied to my own happiness project that I ran probably back in 2021. And I happened to have a list of the things that I wanted to focus on back then, which was really interesting for me to look through because I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. A lot of the things I still am carrying through into this day, and so I imagine she sparked a lot of what I am now working on and seeing the benefits from. In any case, there are a few points there that I think are totally applicable to my reading life, and I did not draw the comparison back when I first read the book, so we're going to go through a couple of them. One of my areas of focus was letting go of crazy perfectionism. It wasn't something I was convinced I could do, but I knew every effort I made towards that goal would be positive. So with my reading life, I'm sure you can tell I take things very seriously, and I have all of these rules, arbitrary rules on myself on when I can read certain things and what I am obliged to do. And I'm shaking all of that up. I am looking at reading as what is going to serve me in today, in the here and now, and I am doing my best to let go of control, or at least that tight illusion of control of everything else. The video production aspect of it, especially with this particular video, is very highlighting to me because this is not a perfect video. I am so far behind schedule when it comes to the vlogging of the books because things didn't go according to plan. And instead of scratching the whole thing and feeling discouraged because it's not perfect, I am pushing through, and hence you are getting a segment. But you'll see a lot of this in episode 6, the final episode of the Incomplete Series Challenge. I am throwing out this perfect way of handling all of the incomplete series on my list and completely shifting it around to perfectionism in the moment. Because overall, I don't think perfectionism is a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing when it's not serving your life. And so if I can get the satisfaction of perfectionism, for example, reading a single book from start to finish without picking up something else, sitting with the series as long as I'm enjoying it without feeling obliged to pick something else up, those kinds of things still give that same perfectionism payoff, but they're in a way that is in line with my bigger value system and what I'm trying to do to improve my reading life. Another one of my points, striving for digital minimalism. Maybe, just maybe, I would have more time for reading and content creation and book review writing if I wasn't on my phone all the frickin' time. It's been something I've been working on for a long time, and I think the amount of mental space I have to give to a particular book or series would increase drastically if I wasn't so scattered on so many different things. Obviously, right? But even now when I'm trying to integrate a new habit of reading before bed, which by the way I've been doing for about maybe a month and a half now, and it's working great. I'm enjoying it, but I still can't get away from picking up my phone. I'm like, put it in another room. Yeah, that seems obvious, but for some reason I'm not quite there yet. But it's little things like that, recognizing it. And actually, I heard a quote today from Madisun Gray. She's a slow living content creator, one of my personal new gurus. I really love everything about her content. She is quoting someone else as saying, "People with the most success breaking free from any addiction in their life do so not with willpower, but with habit replacement." That rings so true for me when it comes to things like breaking a sugar addiction. What I have found the most success by is replacing it with other things that I enjoy equally, but that don't have the same amount of sugar content. Why can't I apply the same thing to digital minimalism? And this is all with the ultimate goal of spending time on the things that I find joy out of, which is primarily reading. I would like to read an entire chapter of a book without once checking my phone. So my incremental improvement would be to continue along those lines and just being aware of what I'm doing and see if I can replace it with something else. I do have a new book journal where I am writing down a few of my thoughts as I'm reading along, and that does seem to be a good replacement some of the time. And this final one, I'm not just drawing a parallel from, like it is actually relevant to my content creation. Work on reviewing every day and continue to establish a strong presence in the book world. And this was right before I started my BookTube channel, so at the time I was only reviewing books. And I don't believe I was doing very well at that either, even back then, before I had all of this extra stuff on my plate. It's all about getting back to core values. For me, book reviewing is what started me finding meaning in what I was doing. And it's kind of what launched all of this passion I have for talking about books and sharing great titles with other people. Writing reviews to help other people find good books to read is the core of my channel's value system and all of my content creation. But I don't do it anymore. I don't make time to do it. And so from that, I am extracting that it is okay that I have continued to simplify my channel and all of my creation down to where I feel like I can touch on all of those things that I feel add the most value. But the one thing I still haven't figured out how to integrate is book reviewing. But as I have simplified my reading, let go of control a bit, tried not to be perfect when it comes to having to read every single book in every single series that I've ever started. It's not quite that bad. Letting go of all that and just doing what I can, being okay with like 5-minute increments and just trying to improve over time. It's kind of where I'm after. So anyway, I had 10 overall. Those were the 3 that I thought most relevant to shelf help. And if you haven't read Gretchen Rubin's Happiness Project, I highly recommend it. One of the most enjoyable nonfictions I've ever read. And you might find yourself feeling a little inspired to make some changes in your own world. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Shelf Help. This is actually the last one of this particular video series. I have one more video going up in it, and it's going to contain a lot of end of challenge wrap-ups and ranking the books and whatnot. So I won't have a slot for it in there. It may make an appearance in a future challenge. Maybe every time I do the incomplete series, we'll also have a shelf help segment. Shelf help, signing off. By the skin of my teeth, I made it. I finished Wind and Truth by the end of January. I spent 2 months on this thing and was really careful not to read any opinions on it because I didn't want my experience to be skewed by whether or not other people liked it or didn't like it. And I'm glad I did, because now I am realizing like everybody I talk to is just like slightly disappointed in this book. That is not the experience I've had with it. I actually think this one was a lot stronger than Rhythm of War. And the moments that were really good were really freaking good. And I thought it was heavily front-loaded and back-loaded. So yes, there was a part in the middle that I felt kind of dragged a little bit, but it was the lull before the storm, and honestly the POV changes happened a lot quicker than they have in the last 2 books. And so it's more the meaningful progression of the storylines took place at a slower pace. But like the activity was buzzing, and I needed that because it's such a long book. You have so much stuff going on at the front. You really kind of need a lull so you have somewhere as a baseline to start to build towards the careening end. And I tell you what, if there was another book out in this one, I would have picked it up immediately. I really am invested in this. I want to know where it's going. And good thing I have some time, because there are some Sanderson books that I have not had a chance to read yet. And the fact that it's all starting to come together and shape into this massive conflict, I would like to read all the things now. So after hearing all the feedback, I definitely liked it more than most people. I don't know about you, maybe it's just me. When I get to the end of a series, especially when there's supposed to be like an epic battle scene or whatever, I tend to brace myself. I'm like, this is going to be so boring. It's just all of the same. You know where it's going. I really hate it when books end with good versus evil battle scenes. It's a common thing. It happens a lot. He surprised me and asked me how delighted I am that I was not bored. In fact, I stayed up late, a couple hours past when I had intended to, just to finish the book. And like I said, came away wanting to read more. After a 1,300-page book, I think that's pretty high praise. So nothing, in my opinion, will replace how much I really loved the first 2 books. The 3rd book had such a sense of discovery that one's still on a pedestal. The 4th book, having read it recently, I can see why it lost a lot of people just because of the pacing issue. But for me, I'm invested enough. I really love these characters. The world building is so stellar. And when he's like talking about all of these magical workings and mechanics and whatnot, my mom got bored. She was like, oh, I can't stand it when he talks about all that stuff. I love it. I really eat that stuff up. I love the progression of the science in this world. Superb. And for me, when things got slower, the characters were strong enough to continue through. He gets a lot of flack for his characters, but they must be exactly the way that my brain enjoys reading about them, where I haven't noticed that there's a problem until so many people have mentioned that he's got weak characters, and then I find myself evaluating it, and I'm like, shut up, noise, like leave me alone. I'm really enjoying this. Don't wreck it. But take with a grain of salt the fact that my personal reading enjoyment, I always tend to gravitate towards the books that value world building, writing style, plot structure, all of those things, pacing, better than characters. Characters are usually some of the last things that I evaluate, oddly. Doesn't mean I can't really appreciate when characters are done superbly. I do recognize that that's not the case here, but for what ticks for me, this checks all the boxes. and I can't wait to read more. I'm very excited. So that wraps up the month. All of the books that I put on hold are continuing to be on hold. I have gotten more into Onyx Storm, which is in stark contrast to Wind and Truth, but might be the drastically different thing I need to keep me from having a book hangover. And yeah, it's been a good one. On to my last month, which I have a few fun reading plans. I can't wait. And then we will do an evaluation to see how many books I read and whether or not I consider the challenge a success. As it happens, finishing Wind and Truth, I have now read 17 books towards this challenge, and it brings me down to 56 open series. That number is not creeping down as fast as I thought it would, given I had 5 months so far to focus on the challenge. But when you read a 1,300 page book, what do you expect? I expected miracles. Anyway, thanks for joining me. My patrons get access to this video series and participate in the challenge a full quarter ahead of when it goes live on the main channel. So if you'd like to participate in real time, link to my Patreon is in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.